to start, inshallah? All right. So, mashallah, there's around 22 questions, which is pretty good. We're getting more and more as we go along. I just feel like some of the people who are posting the questions are coming, and then I don't answer that question because it's the last one on the list, so they don't come next time. So I'm not sure if that's efficient. Like, I'm not sure if I'm actually doing anyone a favor by going through them one by one. If there are suggestions regarding that, I'm okay. Like, if someone who wrote a question right now would like to even want me to answer it now, I can start with whatever questions are asked during the session. Even if not, I'll just go through the list. I think it's the best idea. I have 4 questions written in Arabic. I think the same person wrote all 4 questions. I don't know, but I'll begin inshallah with the first one. ما مفهوم الراعي في كلكم راع وكلكم مسؤول عن رعيته. What is the concept, or what is the idea, or the explanation of the word ra'in in the very, very famous hadith that says كلكم راع وكلكم مسؤول عن رعيته. So I'm just going to write 2 words. So the Prophet ﷺ in a hadith sahih, he said, كلكم راع, you are all ra'i, وكلكم مسؤول, and you are all مسؤول عن رعيته. So the word ra'i, if you go to a dictionary, you will find that the literal explanation for it is someone who takes care of something else. Ra'a means you took care, you showed your you accept you're a care provider for something or someone, for individuals or for groups. Now, a very kind of a slang usage of the term is a shepherd. But why is a shepherd called ra'i? Because he cares for the sheep, right? And that's why the usage of the word ra'i exists for the word shepherd. But the actual meaning of the word ra'i is a caregiver or a caretaker, or someone who cares for something or someone. So the Prophet ﷺ is saying, "Kullukum, all of you, without any exceptions, are ra'i. All of you are caregivers or caretakers. All of you take care of something or someone." And then to make it a bit clearer, he continued and he said, وَكُلُّكُم مَسْئُولٌ عَنْ رَعِيَّتِهِ. All of you are going to be held accountable, or all of you are responsible. The word mas'ul is either going to be held accountable, asked about Yawm al-Qiyamah, or responsible. I find the best way from an English translation to put it is ra'in is responsible for the care of someone or something, and mas'ul is accountable. وَكُلُّكُم مَسْئُولٌ عَنْ رَعِيَّتِهِ. And all of you are going to be held accountable and are going to be asked about رَعِيَّتِهِ, about the group or the thing or the one that you are responsible for. So the ra'iyya, when you look at literature that existed in the Islamic history, then the king would talk about رَعِيَّتِهِ, meaning his population, the people that he was responsible of taking care of, right? And that's what رَعِيَّتِهِ means. So and that's pretty much all you need to know. But if you want to go one step further in understanding the hadith, he continues, it doesn't stop there. And he explains, فَالرَّجُلُ رَاعٍ وَالْإِمَامُ رَاعٍ فَالرَّجُلُ رَاعٍ فِي أَهْلِهِ وَمَسْئُولٌ عَنْ رَعِيَّتِهِ. The man is responsible for his family, and he will be asked and be held accountable for his family. وَالْمَرْأَةُ رَاعِيَةٌ فِي بَيْتِ زَوْجِهَا وَمَسْئُولٌ عَنْ رَعِيَّتِهَا وَمَسْئُولَةٌ عَنْ رَعِيَّتِهَا. And a wife is responsible for her house, for her household, and for children, and she'll be asked about that, and so on and so forth. So the Prophet ﷺ gave a few examples of an imam, a leader who's going to be asked about the responsibility of his people, a father or a husband who's going to be asked about his household, a wife who's going to be asked about her children and her husband. So we're all responsible for someone, for ourselves to begin with, and they're responsible for others as well. And we're going to be asked about, held accountable for that. Now, this is basically parallel. This concept of ra'in, right? It's parallel to a Quranic phrase. It is important to understand how this all kind of fits together. The concept of khalifa that exists in the Quran. The Quran doesn't use the word ra'i. The Quran used the word khalifa. And they're equal in the idea that they bring forward. Khalifa is someone, so what the word khalifa means is someone who carries on a job in the name or in the place of someone else. Someone who will carry on a job or do something for or in the name of somebody else. So you're a khalifa on earth, the meaning being that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts you here responsible to take care of earth in his name. Not instead of him, so the concept of instead of him doesn't work because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you cannot replace him, he can't be substituted, but it's in his name. So the concept of Khalifa is either someone left and you're doing it instead of him, or someone put you somewhere to do something for him in his name. So you're going to be doing this job in the name of the king or the name of your boss, and it's called Khalifa. So the concept of responsibility, of leadership, of stewardship, of you taking on yourself the responsibility of caring for something. In the case of the human race or the human being, you are responsible or the steward of the earth itself within the limitations of your capacity, right? So, or the capacity of your limitations. So you can only take care of so much at a certain point, but you do your best. So as big as your circle is, you take care of everything that you can. You start out in your life with a very small circle of influence. Doesn't go beyond yourself. And then you study and you learn more, and your circle gets bigger, and then you hold positions, and then it keeps on getting bigger. The bigger your circle becomes, the more people you can influence, the more impact you have, the more you are responsible. And the more you are a Khalifa, you're fulfilling the purpose or the role of Khalifa more and more as bigger, and as stronger, and more influential, and as more knowledgeable you become in your life. Does that make sense? And that's the concept of Ra'i that exists in the Hadith. That is basically just a continuation or another word for Khalifa that exists in the Quran. And the Quran is big on that concept. So if you go through the Quran, you'll find the concept of Khalifa and istikhlaf many times. To begin with, at the beginning, the 30th ayah in Surah Al-Baqarah, the first surah, وَإِذْ قَالَ رَبُّكَ لِلْمَلَائِكَةِ إِنِّي جَاعِلٌ فِي الْأَرْضِ خَلِيفَةً. So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala explained to the Malaika to begin with what the role of the human being was going to be, he told him he's going to be a Khalifa. He's going to be here to be taking care of things. Because he has that ability. Because no one else, no other creature on the planet has the ability to actually do that. And that's the role that we carry, by the way. As little as we seem to care about that or to put effort into it. And that's the idea of Ra'i and كُلُّكُمْ مَسْئُولٌ عَنْ رَعِيَّتِهِ. If the question was focused on how are you going to be held accountable? Well, you're held accountable to the extent that you can be held accountable. Meaning you'll be asked, did you put in your full effort? You try your best, you exhaust all your resources. Was this your number one priority? It's not about control. Again, just in case that was the angle of the question, because I'm not sure. If the angle was control, meaning the question is asking, well, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says you are a shepherd, or you're a steward, or you are responsible, and you're going to be held accountable for everyone you're responsible for. Does that mean that I have to control them? No, that's not what it means. What it means is you have to exhaust your effort in trying to do your job, in trying to be responsible for those whom you're responsible for. If you're a father, then you're responsible for the safety, the education, and the well-being of your children. If you're a husband, you're responsible for the well-being of your wife, and the wife is responsible for the well-being of her children and her husband. And if you're a boss, you're responsible for the well-being of your business and the employees under you, and so on and so forth. You're responsible. It doesn't mean you get to control them. It doesn't mean that you make their choices for them. It means that you make the best choices possible in fulfilling your responsibility. And there's a big difference between both concepts, and sometimes we seem to miss it. Okay, that's that question. All right. Second question. كيف نميز الواجبات كفرض عين أو فرض كفاية? How do we understand the difference between something that is called فرض عين and something that is called فرض كفاية? So فرض عين and فرض كفاية. فرض عين means something that is obligatory upon every ayn, every human being. And فرض كفاية means something that is obligatory on the group, on community. And this is something we sometimes we don't pay attention to. Sorry. In terms of the fact that there's actually an obligation upon society. It's not just personal obligations in Islam. You're held, you're accountable, and you're obligated to do certain things as a person. But as a community, as a society, we're also accountable to do certain things as a community, as a society. And if we fail, then we're all going to pay for it. Example, we need to have healthcare in a society. And if we don't have healthcare, then this whole society, each individual, is going to take a certain portion of the sin for us not having healthcare. And if a couple of people take care of that, and they provide the healthcare that this community needs, then none of us carry the sin, and they get the ajr specifically for doing it. Are you understanding? And we get ajr collectively for making sure that that happened if you participated in making sure that that happened. And then when it comes the same thing to education and to the law, and it comes to Islamic knowledge, and it comes to everything, whatever it is that the community needs. I gave a couple of khutbahs about this a few years ago. What we don't understand is that if something is needed in the community, let's say that the service that the youth need in the community, any type of service, social service, counseling, family, safety services, mental health services, whatever it is, something that we need, that was clear to us that we need, and it's not happening, we all are going to be held accountable for it. Each and every one of us, you and me, same. We're going to be held accountable. We're going to carry the sin until it's there. Once it's there, then no one carries the sin anymore. But we don't all have to do it. That's what fard kifaya means. Fard kifaya or fard kifai or wajib kifai. What it means is that not everybody has to do it, but it has to be done in order for not the whole class to be punished. The whole class will be punished if something's not done within the classroom. But not everybody has to do this thing, whatever it is. Recording the lesson or taking notes or whatever it is. But still, it has to be done. And that's the point that sometimes we're on. So, fard ayn means everyone has to do it, like salah, for example. Salah, everyone has to do salah. It's not fard kifaya, it's fard ayn. But salat al-Eid is fard kifaya. Salat al-Eid, enough people have to go and do it for it to count. And even if not everyone does it, then it's still acceptable. But enough people have to do it in order for not everyone to be held accountable. That's the difference between fard ayn and fard kifaya. And they're very important. The question wasn't that. The question was وفي مجتمعات كثيرة في نسبة الأرامل والمطلقات حل هذه القضية تقع على عاتق الفرد وهي الحدود قدام الإسلام. And in a community where there's a lot of so the question was, there's a community that has a lot of people or ladies who are not married or are divorced or widowed, then how do we fix this problem, and is the individual responsible for fixing? When it comes to marriage, you're not responsible, for marrying everyone who's not married. That's not your responsibility as a male or as a female or as anyone. People get to make their choices if they want to get married, if they don't want to get married. Where the issue becomes more important and it becomes a social problem is the concept of marriage itself, how easy it is, how accessible it is, how available it is, how ready our youth how ready they are for it, how much they're being prepared for it, at what age, and that is the social part of when it comes to marriage. But because, let's say, there's someone who's not married, this is not something the whole community carries a responsibility for. No, we have to marry him. No, maybe he doesn't want to get married. Maybe she doesn't want to get married. None of your business, really. But the concept of marriage has to be made accessible, has to be made available, has to be made easier than haram. We have to prepare our youth for it. We have to make sure that it's financially affordable. We have to prepare them psychologically, have to prepare them socially to be able to get married at an age before they start falling into problems. That is a social issue. And that's a problem that the society carries as fard kifaya. But when we talk about, well, there's a lot of ladies here who aren't married, that's really not your thing. Like, you're not supposed to be thinking about that at night. Well, I'm married to one, but there's so many who are not married, I should try to get 3 more. No, it's not your responsibility. I have to fix this problem. No, what you have to fix is the accessibility, the affordability, and the availability of halal. That's what we have to focus on, and we don't have that today. I hate going to. You ask me what I hate, I will tell you I hate weddings. I hate going to weddings. I hate it. I really do. And when I'm asked to go, I say yes to the person, and in my heart, I'm like, I'm not going. And then if something happens, I have to go. I go. I don't enjoy it at all. Why? Because when I look at what's being pumped into a wedding, it's very depressing. You go to a wedding, and then what this person has spent on his wedding is more money than I've ever seen in my life so far. Like, I've never owned things in my life that actually add up to what he just pumped into this one night. It doesn't make sense, and I don't think it's proper. And I think it's a lot of these are social, there's cultural things, there's extravagant ways of kind of expressing happiness or expressing the joy of marriage. And I think it's making it very hard for youth or for young people to actually come together and get married. Another problem would be, and I know this is maybe going a bit on a rant, but when it comes to divorce, we've demonized the concept. We've marginalized those who are getting divorced. We've put a stigma to it. So now 2 people get married and they don't like each other after maybe a year of marriage or 2 years, and they're not happy. They did counseling, they tried therapy, it's not working, and they're just not enjoying each other. But they don't want to get a divorce because why? She won't be able to get married again, and he'll be stigmatized. No, why? There's really no problem. There's no reason for that. That's another problem we have as a culture. people come together, they don't agree, and they leave each other again, and they get married again. And when you look at the Sahaba, it was something that happened quite often. You know, and a lady would get divorced and marry numerous times in her life, and so would men, and until they finally, fit and found a life together. I'm not encouraging divorce, but I'm saying that we should not stigmatize it if it has to happen. It is sometimes a needed thing within a community. It's an out that sometimes you need and you're entitled to take, and you should not feel that it's going to ruin your chances, and the ladies should, because it happens to the ladies way more than it happens to the men. Again, a cultural problem that we have. Go ahead.
Can you explain the marriage thing?
In what way?
You talk about like a couple of things about marriage.
Yeah.
Just like preparation financially, men have all of that.
Sure. So today, like when I go to weddings, I see like how much money is being put into these things. Like for one night, $50,000 or $40,000 or $60,000 being.
Not the wedding, sorry. Before that, talk about like a couple of things that.
Sure.
Like why don't people get married? But
so one of
like the concept of marriage has to be available.
Yeah. So one of the things is that there's an expectation of you're going to need a certain amount of money in order for you to actually go through marriage. So you have to have the dowry, which is going to add up to maybe sometimes it's I don't really do kutub kitab, but sometimes I'm there or sometimes I do it, and the numbers that they're putting are ridiculous. $10,000 or $5,000 or something that the guy probably doesn't have. And he's probably taking a loan, and then the muakhar is another 50 or 60 or something that's also a very, very large amount of money. So the man is feeling that he has to have that money. Then the urs itself, the wedding, he has to have enough for that. And then she may want to buy clothing and jewelry, so he has to have another additional couple of $1,000s for that. So he's thinking in his mind, I have to have $60,000, $70,000, and if I have at least, and that's just having a very simple wedding. Or $40,000 if I'm going to really make it almost nothing. And many people don't have that amount. Number two is that. It's been made more difficult in terms of parents accepting young men who aren't ready yet. If you still want to do it in the traditional way, where the man comes and he asks for the Eid bint, asks for the hand of the lady in marriage, then guys don't have the same level of confidence that they used to, due to the fact that they're financially not ready for things, and also socially they're not ready for things. I mean, they're not ready to present themselves in the way that they need to present themselves. And so psychologically they're not ready because they're not sure if they're capable of actually starting a household and dealing with one person for the rest of their lives. And of course here in the West, this choice of marriage is made into something, it's like a balloon, and they've blown into it to make it so huge it makes it impossible for you to make this choice because it's so much, and the person you have to spend the rest of your life with, and he has to be your soulmate, and I don't know what to do, and someone tell me, and they don't know how to do it. And the funny thing is, when you talk about arranged marriages, like arranged marriages that come from Eastern Asia, they have way better success rates than marriages here in the West. Why? I'll tell you why. There's a very simple psychological reason. Because people who get arranged marriages, what they say is, "Hada nasibi." This was my you're my destiny. I never even saw you in my life. Like I was, so we're together in this, and they have that feeling that this is God's choice, so they go with it. If you knew that this person was God's choice, you would be fine. Oh, like God chose her for me, then I have no say in the matter whatsoever. But if it's you, you're not sure about anything. Like I see, we're not sure about anything. If it's me, I don't know what to choose. I want to choose all of them or none of them, or I don't know what to do anymore. So it becomes too confusing and too difficult to deal with. And that's the problem of Western psychology and Western sociology, where the way that they view marriage is blown out of proportion to the point where it becomes a very, very difficult choice to make. So all those things put together, and the fact that you don't, how do you get married? You have to mature. You have to mature physically. Now that happens early on. But you have to mature on a number of different other levels. You have to mature financially, you have to mature psychologically, you have to mature socially, and you have to mature spiritually or religiously. So you have to have 5 levels of maturation or maturity in order for you to be able to get married. And the problem in Western society, or today in today's world, is that we mature physically 14, 15, and we don't mature everything else until we're 30. Those 15 years where things are, so we're not preparing our youth for it either. So there's a problem of preparation on parents. We're not preparing our youth to actually be ready by 20, 21 to get married. And we don't make it easy for them, we don't start pushing them towards it. It's a matter, you can't really, as a young guy, it's hard for you to make that choice. You need a little push, you need a nudge. You need someone to kind of keep on telling you that this is what you do, your parents behind you to make, and then it's made easy, meaning on the other side, parents of females and girls make it easier. I mean, their expectations are lower when it comes to the financial aspect, at least, of the person. They're looking for actually the quality of the person that they're dealing with, and a lot of that doesn't exist. I mean, that culture is not around, and that culture, for us to bring it back, will take time. I'm not sure how long. I hope not too long, because If it takes too long, we're gonna end up losing a lot, and there's gonna be a lot of. Just go ahead.
So you said like back home, this like success rates of marriage are like higher than here. But do you think that's just because divorce is stigmatized back home, so people feel like they need to stay in the marriage, but like here
Sure.
they don't?
Maybe. There's a lot of elements. And I'm not talking about the Middle East. Arranged marriages are more, Pakistan, India, those parts of the world. We don't have in the Middle East. We don't really have arranged marriages anymore, or at least for the vast majority of people, that's not how it's done. It used to be done like that, like maybe 70 years ago. That's how it was. The guy wouldn't even know who the girl was. His mother would just go say, "I saw her and she's nice," and that's it. And they get married. But now it's not. But it's still something similar to that back home. So maybe the stigma regarding divorce still exists, and maybe that's one of the reasons. Maybe it isn't. We don't know. Like, it's very hard to measure these things with taking out all the elements and keeping one in. I don't know, but we do know that from a psychological point of view, people who do have arranged marriages, they tend to think like that as well. Because it's not just about the marriage continuing; it's the happiness of the marriage too. Like, that was also part of the measurement, that people are content, that they're not miserable in their marriage. A lot of people here in the West are miserable in their marriages because divorce is stigmatized even here in the West. It's not like it's stigmatized everywhere. Like, maybe there's a higher stigma back home than there is, or in the Middle East than there is here, but there's still a stigma regarding divorce. No one's happy when they get divorced. No one. And everyone fears the concept. And everyone fears it happening to them. Here, it just happens more often. So people feel like they're not alone, or they're not in a very, very small minority. Actually, they're a part of the majority at this point. But still, now this is the question. I'm not sure if that answered the question, Yani, properly. But wallahu alam, this is the basic idea. Our problem is a society problem of the way that marriage is being looked at. The availability of it, the ease of it, the preparations for the youth for it, and then how we're going to look at it from a financial point of view and from a social point of view. You have to be able socially to start a house, and to be psychologically you have to be ready to commit yourself to someone and to be responsible for a household on both sides. We have to these things take time. Like, for them to change, they won't change in a day or two, but they will change if the culture starts changing and then the mentality of people start changing. You want to say something? Okay, so that's my answer to this question, and it's a very difficult one to answer. Like, I don't have. The question was mal hulul. What are the solutions that Islam offer? Well, Islam offers a package regarding marriage. So it talks about I'm not talking about really early marriages, but it talks about early marriages. Meaning you get married at the moment you're capable. The moment you have the ability, you start searching to get married. Islam talks about muhur, dowry, that is not that is not expensive, that is not difficult. We don't look for how much money the person has. We don't ask for too much money. We're looking for the quality of the person. We're looking at the religion, at the deen, and at the ethics of the person that we're dealing with, and that people start small and they get support. So parents support the youth, and they can start with a simple life and then build their lives together. And then slowly make more money, become better, and they build their lives, and that brings a lot of bonding into the marriage. When you start poor and then slowly you start getting better, you feel the marriage there's more merit to it, even, because you started somewhere and then you guys moved up together. So someone who has good ethics will treasure that and will enjoy. So that it's a package that Islam offers regarding marriage that we don't really follow. We follow the cultural part of it, like whatever fits us from a cultural perspective, which is we want to be able to walk around and say that, well, my daughter married a doctor, and my son, he married the daughter of this. So it's more of just prestige, trying to put up prestige. And we had a wedding. Where you had the wedding, we had it there, and it was this is how much money you spent on it. And the more extravagant it is, the more they feel confident about themselves. But they understand that you're destroying a whole generation, because maybe you have cash, but you're putting a precedent for people or you're putting something for people to compare to, and that they can't compare to. It's impossible for them to even live up to half of that. And it's not like we have funds ready. Like, if that was going to be the norm, I'm sorry, maybe I'm taking too long, but if that was going to be the norm, at least have a fund ready. So if a young man wants to get married, have a fund, lend him money so he can go and do this, and then he'll pay you back. But that doesn't even exist. So we're telling this person that you have to somehow, some way, go and make $50,000 as quickly as you can before you're 25 if you want to get married. Or just sit around and, I don't know, find your own way to fix it. Like, we have nothing to offer you. Either your parents have money or go find a way to make $50,000. No one can do that. Practically, we know that that's not possible. People don't have that money. Can't make that much money by the time they're 25. Or what is the percentage statistically? How many guys before 25 have that much money in their bank account, not taken from parents? Very few people do. So why are we asking for something that is impossible? You know, why are you putting standards that are completely unpractical and unrealistic and asking everyone to live up to? And then when everyone goes to haram and start doing things in the wrong way, we object as a community and we're like, look at our youth. And what do you mean look at you? Look at you. Why did you do this? You're the father right now. Why are you asking for so much for your daughter? And why are you asking for so less for your son? And why don't you care? Why is it not okay for your daughter to do what your son is doing every day? You know about it. Why? Why is this okay? Why do we have double standards? And why don't we actually look at the problem as something that affects everyone? Literally everyone. Every human being, every family. Maybe families who have young kids, maybe I don't think about it too much because my son is 5. In another 20 years, become a big problem. It's not fixed by then. I don't know what to do. I mean, I have enough money to support him to get married. Then where are we going to go? How are we going to do this? It's not. And even if I try to convince him or explain to him or prepare him to become for a marriage at a proper age, what happens if the society is pushing him in the opposite direction? He doesn't want to. It's also problematic. There was an expectation back in the Middle East, like 100 years ago. There was an expectation. Once you were 18, you had to be married. If you weren't married, why? Khair. What's your problem? Are you sick? What's going on? You should be married by now. You have to be very, very poor. Or you have to be like in a very, very difficult situation so you don't have time to get married, or you have an issue. Like there's something going on with your life that's holding you back, but you want to do it. My grandfather, not my great-grandfather, my grandfather. And my name is Adnan Ahmed Murshid. Got married, he was 13. He was 13 years old and my grandmother was 14. And on his wedding day, he ran away and hid in a barn because he didn't want to get married. And they took him anyway when he got married. And he had 10 kids. Like, there was an expectation that this happened. Right? I'm not saying that that's the right way to do it. Like, obviously, that's not the right way to do it. But between that extreme and this extreme, there has to be something in the middle ground that works. And when you go back to the text, the Islamic texts, and you read the Quran, وَأَنْكِحُوا الْأَيَامَ مِنْكُمْ وَالصَّالِحِينَ مِنْ عِبَادِكُمْ وَإِمَائِكُمْ, meaning marry off or allowed to marry those who aren't married from yourselves and even from your slaves. So if there was a slave person, a person who didn't have his freedom and he wanted to get married, you would have to, if you were the master, you had to marry this person. You have to help him to get married. إِن يَكُونُوا فُقَرَاءَ يُغْنِيهِمُ اللَّهُ مِنْ فَضْلِهِ. If they are poor, then Allah will give them, will allow them to build a life and make money. Meaning, even if they're poor, well, he doesn't have any money. Doesn't matter. You help him out, and he'll find a way to do it. وَلْيَسْتَعْفِفِ الَّذِينَ لَا يَجِدُونَ نِكَاحًا حَتَّى يُغْنِيَهُمُ اللَّهُ. And if those can't find anyone to help them and they have no family, then istafif, meaning practice some chastity until Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives you enough to get married. But that is in a society where you can actually make enough to get married. But if I have $0 or I have 40, I'm minus 40 because I decided to educate myself, and I have to become plus 50, so I have $100,000 to make before I get married, then you know what? No, I'm not going to do that because I'm making what, $2,500 a month or $3,500 a month, and I have to pay half of that for rent. Then I'm never going to make this money. It's math at the end. It's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. Or the standards have to change. What does it take to get married? When you think about it, it takes literally nothing. You don't even need a Shaykh, to be honest, when it comes to kitab. You go to the family. You say, I want to get married. They say yes. You agree on a dowry. It could be as simple as a couple of dollars, or a gift or something, or even a materialistic possession as a gift. You're married. You have a walima. You have some food. You gather family to eat. You're married. Then you go and you rent a $900, $800 apartment somewhere. You both get a part-time job. You pay for it, and you're married and you live and you have a life and you start building it slowly. Or we need to have the Hollywood, weddings. You want the Hollywood weddings? Fine. Give me a way for guys to do it. I'm okay with that. That's what you want, and everyone wants to do that, and that's the standard we're going to live to. Khalas, hadir. How do we get this done so that they get married before they're 25? Given that they don't have a lot of cash, the parents don't have money. They're not all lawyers or doctors or businessmen. How do they do it? Or because look, you can't say, well, they're poor, you should have simple weddings. No, that's not how it works. We're a society. We don't have 2 levels. Okay, you're rich, faddal. You can do it in the Hilton. You're not rich, faddal, do it in the gym of the masjid. You pay $35 for the whole event. No, we have to have some level of equilibrium in how we're going to do this. We have to have those who don't have money to do it at all should be helped, and those who have too much should have a certain limit and be capped in how much they're going to spend on a wedding, right? Because we're putting precedents for our community. We're trying to make everyone feel that they're financially, or that they're equal to a certain extent. So don't do something that will make people feel that less about themselves, and then you put a standard that everyone has to come close to or something, and that is a problem. Yeah, you like that concept, don't you? That works for you. Okay, these questions you guys enjoy. All right, the third one. لماذا وضع الله عقوبة الجلد في جريمتي الزنا ورمي المحصنات? min dun shuhud. I don't know what this question means. It doesn't make sense. Why did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put the punishment of lashing for both adultery and rami al-muhsanat, and speaking about the honor of a lady, meaning speaking that or accusing her of committing zina? Min dun shuhud, and the question is without shuhud, without witnesses. And that's not true. It needs witnesses. You need 4 witnesses every time. If you don't have witnesses, then you're the one who's going to be lashed. So if you say, this person committed zina, then you need to bring 3 other witnesses, and you yourself have to be a worthy witness. You have to be someone who's established in the community, known to have certain ethics. Meaning, if you were to go to a court of law, then you would be taken as and you're going to be a witness, a character witness. Then you would work. I mean, they couldn't. No one could come after you and say, okay, this guy is no longer, disregard his testimony because he has character problems himself. That makes sense. So even in modern law, that's still a concept as far as I understand. If you bring a character witness, then the best to testify for you or against someone else, then what you need is as the opposition is just to go after the person's character. If you can prove that this person is not honest and not trustworthy, then khalas, the whole thing is going to be tossed out of the window. And the same thing happens when it comes to adultery or talking about the honor of, or accusing a lady of doing something. You need 4 witnesses. So basically, the act of adultery had to happen publicly. Who does something like that in a place where 4 different individuals see them? 4 respectable individuals, people of rank in the society, see them. Then these people are doing it obviously publicly, like right outside. So I'm walking by and what is a'udhu billah, and then and if it's happening inside a house and someone peeks in, it's disregarded. So if I say I saw them doing it, well, where do you see it? In their house. Well, what were you doing around their house? I was looking through the window. Why were you looking through the window? Because I'm nosy, then you get it. Now you're going to be punished for that. Why? You don't get to do justice. It's none of your business what people do inside their homes. And it's like the idea here is zina is the number 1 capital sin. It's worse. Some scholars argue it's worse than murder. I think they're equal, because zina can destroy a family, can destroy a whole legacy, a whole unit. It's the worst thing you can ever imagine doing. If you do it publicly, it's even worse, because now you're normalizing this, and you added to the actual sin that you committed and the offense that you committed. You added the public shaming that's going to happen to this person, and the fact that everyone's going to know about it. You added the fadiha that now is going to become public knowledge, which is even worse. So in the Quran, you're not being punished in this dunya for committing the sin specifically, but you're being punished for committing it publicly. You'll be punished for committing it Yawm al-Qiyamah, severely. Like Yawm al-Qiyamah, there'll be a lot of punishment for those who committed, but in this dunya, it's for the public acts. Besides that, no one. How are people going to know? Would videos, or if someone filmed and then posted, would that work? Most scholars say no. That the Quran was very strict on saying it had to have 4 witnesses who actually saw the action. Seeing a picture, a hologram, doesn't work. And I think that's proper, because the purpose of it is that it's something done publicly. Yes.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
I was wondering what the impact of Imam Shafi'i and his book called the Risala, right?
Yeah.
What effect that had on the other schools of thought when they were being developed?
So nothing to do with this question specifically. Okay. Let me just finish this, and I'll answer that, inshallah. The final part of the question is, why did this punishment kind of fade away by time? It didn't fade away. What happened was that after the fall of the Ottoman Empire, the Islamic law was no longer the constitutional laws of any of the countries, besides maybe Saudi Arabia and a few of the Gulf countries. But none of the other countries actually used any of the Islamic laws for adultery, theft or murder. So none of that was used anymore, so it didn't disappear, it's just people stopped practicing it. Now we can't force people to accept a law. The majority has to accept a law in order for that law to be executed and be used within a society. And if the majority of people don't want it, then that's their choice. I still believe, of course, as Muslim, we believe this is the law of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and if you were capable of using it and having it to be the law of the land, then we would. And if people don't, if the majority of the people don't want it, then that's their choice, and we stick to whatever the law that they're going to have. But our conviction is that that is the law of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Does that make sense? It's not the same. So you're not forced, or you're not required by Islam to enforce a law upon people that they don't want. If they don't want it, then that's their choice. They'll be held accountable by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for that to begin with. But this is the law of Allah. This is how He sees societies being maintained. Meaning certain offenses have to be taken seriously, and there's going to be serious consequences for those who transgress against them. And that's all I got to say, I guess, regarding that question. Now you asked about Kitab al-Risala. Kitab al-Risala was one of the earliest, probably if not the earliest, it's one of the earliest Islamic books to be written by an imam, and that wasn't specifically a compilation or a collection of narrations. Like Kitab al-Muwatta for Imam Malik and so forth. Like most of the books that were written in the early ages or the early years were just books of hadith, meaning just someone collecting. Risala was the first book that was written specifically on usul, right? It was written about al-fiqh and usul al-fiqh. And usul al-fiqh is the fundamentals of jurisprudence. Now that's a very difficult. So I'll break it down as simply like this for you. The Constitution, right? And then the legal maxims, right? We talked about that once, and then the law, right? Or let's say the Constitution, the law, and then the verdicts given by judges. Correct? There's three things. There's the Constitution, and then there's the law, and then there's the verdict that's going to be given by a judge. Islamically speaking, the Constitution is usul al-fiqh. The law are the qawa'id al-fiqhiyah. Right? And then the verdict given by the imam is fiqh. So the verdict that is given by the judge is parallel to al-fiqh itself. So when we study a book of fiqh, we're just studying all the verdicts that the imams gave on certain situations. Now, if the situation was to change dramatically, then you would need a different verdict, but you'd have to go back to the law. So you have to be someone who studied the law, so you understand the qawa'id fiqhiyya, the rules of jurisprudence, which is a step further. Now, if that's not enough, meaning the issue is very fundamental, it's a problem that is very difficult to talk about, then you need to go one step further behind, which is studying usul al-fiqh, or understanding the Constitution itself. So Imam al-Shafi'i, when he wrote al-Risala, he put in his own words his way of going through things, meaning how he had what his list of priorities are when he's coming up with a verdict or coming up with a ruling, right? So he put the Quran, and then he put the Sunnah, and then he went in detail in the Prophet ﷺ's hadith. So he started talking about the fact that he takes the mutawatir, anything that is certain, authentic, has a level of authenticity that is certain, and then he started talking about the ahad hadith, meaning the narration of hadith that only comes through one or two people. Right? And he gave that merit. He said that this is important, and we should use this for rulings. So when he did that, he set the president of putting a list of priorities or a methodology of thought in terms of coming up with a ruling. So even though all the scholars before him and after him already did that, but they didn't actually word it. So he was the first one to word it, and then everyone started to word it similarly. That's why if you want to study now usul al-fiqh, you will study all four madhab, if not 5 or 6. If you don't add to that maybe Ja'fariyya, or add to that Zaydiyya or Ibadiyya, or you want to talk about Zahiriyya, or talk about even the Shia. They all have a methodology. Meaning, okay, I have a problem, what do I go? I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I start with the first. Is there an answer there? No. Okay, I go number 2. Not an answer there? 3, 4. I have a methodology. I have a way of going by things. So example, Imam Ahmad, in the Hanabila, the qiyas is drawing analogies or parallels. He doesn't go to that. He goes to all the hadith that he has. Even if the hadith isn't sahih, even if it's not an authentic hadith, he will still go to that. He'll prefer it over an analogy. Abu Hanifa, for example, is the opposite. Abu Hanifa will only take a certain hadith, meaning mutawatir or mashhur. Has to be very high up. If it's just narrated by one person, he'll draw an analogy first. He'll draw an analogy to something in the Quran before he takes that hadith. Imam al-Shafi'i says, I'll take the hadith sahih first, and then I go to an analogy. I leave the hadith da'if to the end of the list completely. So it's just a matter of, okay, here are the different sources of rulings, the sources of revelation in Islam. Okay, put them, prioritize them. So they all slap Quran number 1, obviously. But then after that, what do we do first? And then, of course, I'm talking about it in an extremely generalized manner. If you want to go into detail of how to do that, there becomes a lot of questions. I did a course on Usul al-Fiqh. I started in, I think, late 2015. It took 2 years. And at the end of it, only 2 people actually stayed. It started out with around 15 people. And at the end of it was only 2 people. It was Brother Emmanuel and Brother Ubaidullah. The only 2 people who actually stuck to the end of it and finished the whole of course it took 2 years. It's very, very complicated. It's a lot, but you end up learning a lot about the deen. Because you start understanding how the scholars thought. Meaning what thought process they had. And Kitab al-Risala is the pioneering book in that. Is that what you were asking about, or did I not come across to your question at all?
I was just wondering, I know that his book and
Sure.
his kind of students kind of strive for that methodology, but did the Hanafis and Malikis immediately start doing that, or was there?
They had their own methodology. So every school of thought has a different list. They list things. I gave you examples, right? Abu Hanifa would go to analogies immediately after a hadith that is certain. You wouldn't go to hadith ahad first. No, you go to qiyas, right? And then Imam Ahmad had a different way of doing it. So, but that was not worded. They did that, but they didn't word it. Imam Shafi'i worded his methodology. And once he worded it, everyone started to word it after that. Say, okay, that makes sense because we want our students to be able to continue this methodology. And then, whether you were Maliki, Hanafi, Hanbali, or Shafi'i, was based on which methodology of thought you agreed with more. Imam Malik, for example, the acts or the practices of Ahl al-Madinah came to him before certain ahadith, narrated by certain people. Right? Because he was living in Medina. So yeah, that's his methodology. You may agree with it, then you will accept his rulings more. You don't agree with it, then you accept someone, you look at another methodology, right? I think today that's where we're going to be, as Muslims, we're going to be doing a lot of work. Why? We need maybe a revised methodology of going through things. Not to say that the other ones weren't good, but I think we can actually improve on it a bit. We can improve, because we know all the details now. Back then they were struggling, they didn't have the science and knowledge wasn't as available as it is today for us. So we can actually maybe tweak the methodologies a bit and come up with one that is a bit that suits us here in the West at least. I'll give you an example. Remember we talked about music I think last year or the year before. I can't remember. And I give my rule, the way I see it, in my opinion, which is that there's no problem with it. And then there was a brother, I think, or a sister, I can't remember, who was saying, well, there's a hadith that says this, right? So we talked about the hadith, and I said, but there's a problem here. See, the way I think, this is what Abu Hanifa thought in his general way of looking at things. I think that aspect of his madhab is maybe proper today, or could be used today. Is that today Islam is more universal than it ever was, and we're looking at an Islamic narrative that is going to suit all 7 billion people on the planet. So if 7 billion people are going to stick to a ruling of haram or halal, then show me evidence on this ruling, especially if it's going to be haram. Show me some evidence on this ruling. So if you show me one hadith, and then I take the narration of that hadith, and I find that hadith is just narrated one person from one person from one person from one person. So this dude in the middle, that no one knows, I'll give you a name for example, and you've never heard that name before. You don't know this person at all. You've never met this person. He has one line of definition in the books of Tarajim, like in the books that talk about scholars. Like Imam al-Dhahabi wrote like one line, he was a good guy, he was very honest, that's it. Now this person is going to carry the weight of the word haram about something that everyone does for the end of time. That's too much weight. One guy can't carry all that. That's too much for one person to carry. No. Give me more. Tell me more people who talked about this. And if you can't, then maybe your argument is weak. And maybe it's not gonna. Maybe it doesn't suit a universal narrative of the deen. It will suit a cultural one. Back home, that's fine, because that's how people kind of function anyway. But a universal narrative of the deen. Make sure that when you're going to say something is haram, because most things, the asl or the way of looking at things is everything is halal until proven otherwise. Then if you're going to say haram, make sure you have really good evidence to support that it's haram. Show me evidence after evidence. Show me the Quran talking about it many times and the hadith going into detail. Don't give me one narration. Yeah? He said one thing about haircuts, and now every kid can't have the haircut they want forever and ever and ever. Why? That's one person who narrated this. He's going to carry the haircuts of all people to the end of time. It doesn't make sense to me from a logical point of view. Yes.
Well, it's just another question that I had.
Sure.
I don't know if it's off topic, but I came across the hadith that said that one of the first 3 people to be entered with hellfire is like a scholar who taught Islamic knowledge because he had the wrong intention.
Exactly.
So because there are different signs of the day of judgment coming true. I'm just wondering, how do we differentiate between fraudulent scholars and scholars who should actually take knowledge?
You can't really differentiate. that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the only one who does it, Yawm al-Qiyamah, because He knows the intentions. We base it on how much they adhere to evidence, to rationale, to proper methodology of thought when it comes to giving rulings, and to behavior. Meaning you can also see someone's, the merit of behavior for scholars is a big thing. If a scholar is not practicing Islam properly, if you look at this person and his family and the way he acts, and it's not Islamic, then to be honest, his knowledge starts to drop. And I know that doesn't make sense sometimes, because you're not talking about the person, we're talking about the idea. True, that's very true. But Islamically, that's not the reality.
And I'm talking
Yes.
based on the controversies recently, you know.
Sure.
Like that's kind of what prompted me to ask this question. So how do you differentiate what's true and what's not, especially when we have scholars fighting one another, right? It
Sure.
makes the whole ummah confused.
Sure, it definitely does. The controversy amongst scholars within the ummah is a big problem, and it causes people to be confused. However, as someone like you, who's young, who's educated, who has the ability to think for himself, what you do is you listen to the arguments that exist, and then you make up your mind based on which arguments makes more sense to you. And you take responsibility. As a Muslim, you're supposed to take responsibility of the arguments and the rulings that you accept. You've heard the concept of fatwa shopping, right? The fatwa shopping isn't wrong in the sense where you go ask people for different fatwa. You're trying to, no, it's wrong if you don't care what the idea was. Like if you ask me, is this halal and haram? Halal, okay, good, and you walk away. You have no interest of understanding how I came to that. Like you don't care. You just want to hear the word halal so you can throw it on me, and then you can walk away. Or haram, then throw it on me and then leave. No, that is fatwa shopping, because you're not interested in understanding the logic behind it. But as a well-educated young individual living in the West, you have the ability, when I say, okay, this is wrong or this is right, you can question it. You can ask for the evidence. You can listen to the other argument, and then you can come up make up your own mind. But is that a problem? Of course, that's a problem. But that's how Islam evolved, and this is the development of the Deen. Islam does not have the hierarchy of. There's no pope in Islam. There's no one person who dictates after the Prophet ﷺ how things are going to be. What actually happens is we study, we obtain knowledge, we practice, and we try, and we give our opinions, and we try to do our best. Sometimes we hit a bullseye, sometimes we make mistakes, and then we fix again. But the Constitution or the guidelines, the Quran, is still there for us to always go back to and to revise our steps and revise the way we function based on it. But of course, the controversy of scholars is a big problem today. Maybe instead of complaining about it, well, become one yourself and lessen the controversy. That's the best way to fix it. I always tell people who talk about when is the hero going to come. Look, either you be the hero or be quiet. Don't wait for anyone. Like if you're waiting for a savior, either be the savior, just don't think like that at all. Like either get rid of that thought or be the savior yourself. One of the two things. Please don't waste my time, because I don't know if he's coming. I don't know who he is. I don't know. I mean, probably it's going to be a she anyway. At the end of the day, the way things are kind of moving for us as guys, it's going to be something totally different. And either you be it or just stop asking the question. Yes.
I have another question related to our earlier discussion. Is it accurate to say that the Hanafis, as the school developed, they became more like Shafi'is in the sense that they stopped relying so much on qiyas and intellect and more on just specific hadiths? Is that an accurate characterization of the?
What's accurate about the Hanafiya is that they deviated from the methodology of Abu Hanifa a lot later on. That's a definite. So they're one of the most. They have the most number of opinions within the madhab, in contrast to any other of the three schools of thought. Meaning, you will find in the Shafi'i school of thought 2-3 opinions on one thing. In the Hanafi school of thought, you'll find 5 or 6 or 7, because the later Hanafiya deviated a bit from the methodology of Abu Hanifa, and they kind of developed their own. Because even Abu Yusuf, Yaqub al-Ansari, and Muhammad ibn al-Hasan and Zufar, themselves, the students of Abu Hanifa, they had a methodology that was a bit different from their own Imam. So yes, but I don't think they became more similar to the Shafi'iyya. I don't think that's accurate. But I think yes, they did deviate a bit from the methodology of Abu Hanifa. So they did start putting meaning they started accepting more hadith in contrast to qiyas on way more masail and a lot of different situations and a lot of different verdicts. But not necessarily that they became closer to the Shafi'iyya. Unless you're referring to the fact that after the ahadith became a bit more understood and a bit more well studied, everyone became more like the Shafi'iyya. Like if that's what you mean, then yeah, everyone, but all the schools of thought kind of came closer to what the Shafi'iyya did because they started looking at hadith a bit differently. But still, the differences still exist. And when you study the madhab al-Hanafi, you're not studying the later Hanafiyya. You're studying old stuff. You're studying Kanz al-Daqa'iq for Nasafi. You're studying Sharh Hidayah Bidayat al-Mubtadi. Like you're studying something written by Al-Murghinani or Sarkhasi. You're studying stuff that were written like a long time ago when the Hanafi madhab was still early. And that's still what they agreed to. That's still what they hold on to. But later Hanafiya had different opinions. They deviated a bit from what Abu Hanifa did. But so it's a very flexible madhab, and that's why I think it suited non-Arabs a lot. I think there's merit to that as well. I think it's worth a proper study because when you look at the Muslims who from Iran East, Muslims who are Sunni, most of them are Hanafiya. Why do you think that is the case? Because Abu Hanifa had in the madhab a very flexible methodology that allowed cultures to hold on to their cultures, to hold on to their identities and not lose it completely. However, the Hanbali madhab is much more difficult for anyone to kind of practice, and it's more suitable for people who live in a certain area. And that it's a very deep and long conversation and discussion. Maybe we can talk about it. Come to the masjid one day and I'll sit down with you and we can go into more detail if you're interested in understanding how it all evolved and developed and changed and kind of more. Okay, 7:30. I will stop with that question, inshallah. Please erase the questions that we have. I'm thinking next time maybe I start from the end of the list. Just because I'm thinking that probably some people here are kind of putting questions in, so I get to answer the questions that are being posted immediately in contrast, because today I don't see people many here. I think a lot of people aren't coming because of the fact that they're putting questions, they're not being answered, and they're waiting too long for it to be answered, and they're not coming the time after. So that I'll try to do next time, inshallah. So if you have a question, you can post it. Then I'll start from the end of the list and I'll answer questions going backwards. That way, if you posted a question, and you're here to listen to the answer, then I'll offer the answer, inshallah, and I'll have the same date. And if it's the opposite, just tell me to answer the question number 4 or 5, and I'll be happy to do it, inshallah. Jazakumullah khair. صلى الله عليه وسلم.